All right, everybody. Again, welcome to this webinar. It is May 12th, 2016, and we are really excited about the webinar that we're going to have today. This is how to increase the value of your e-learning with HTML5 and XAPI. And we're going to have the ever so illustrious James Kingsley on to help us walk through that and really learn. James, I'm about to unmute you, so feel free to do whatever you need to do before you go live. James, can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, by the miracle of the internet. Again, just some housekeeping rules. Everyone will be kept muted just so that we keep the background noise down and that type of thing. We invite you, if you have questions, please feel free to type them into the GoToWebinar panel there. We'll be taking them throughout the webinar, but probably mostly at the end, just because I know that James does have some things that he wants to go through. Last time I took some time to introduce James as though everybody didn't already know him, so we're going to go ahead and bypass that. It's kind of like introducing Tom Hanks when you're sitting at the Oscars. It's just not something we need to do. So without further ado, James, I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, thanks a lot. So I'm pretty excited about today's topic. We're just going to barely scratch the surface of it, but hopefully it's going to be enough to get your imagination flowing and get you some ideas so that you can start building some of these type of solutions yourself. So a couple of things that have been really big in our industry lately is HTML5 and XAPI, or as some people call it, the tin can. So that's the new version of SCORM, if you will. Mobile is getting thrown in a lot there too, and so the solution I'm going to show you today works great on mobile devices. You could take it a step further and actually package it as an app if you want to, but we're not going to talk about that part of it today. So let me start by sharing my screen, and let's see if it'll let me pick a screen. Which screen do you see?
Right now we're looking at your Skype screen, your Google Docs outline, and in the background looks like some code there.
Here we go.
There we go.
All right. So this is the end product that we're going to be building or demonstrating today. And to build this, we use a combination of HTML5, and we're going to have a login for it so that we can find out who the learner is. We're going to use an XAPI JavaScript wrapper to wrap around that so that we can then send statements off to our learning record store as the learner is navigating through this content. And as you can see, it's just kind of dummy content in there right now. So let me show you some of the tools we're going to use here for it. So first off, I mentioned that we're going to be using HTML5. My favorite kind of library just to go to quickly build HTML5 pages and websites is called Bootstrap. It's been around for a little while now, and there are some new ones coming out that have some cooler features to it, but I'm pretty familiar with Bootstrap, and I think it works well for both mobile and desktop, so it's my preferred. You can see Bootstrap 4 is coming soon. Great thing about Bootstrap is, like they say here, it works pretty much everywhere, and with just a couple of tags in your HTML, it will create for you really pretty stuff like oops, that's not it, like this page here. I'm using a theme on that. That's this Bootswatch theme here. Called Superhero. So that's going to be what we're using to build our page with. We're going to use jQuery, which is a JavaScript library, and that just it really packages up a lot of the common JavaScript functionality that you would do into nice little neat functionality and calls to make it easier so you don't have to write long functions from scratch to get things done. So you can use jQuery for that. Also, it helps a lot with cross-browser stuff so that, as we all know, you you write code for every browser, and then you write hacks for IE. And so jQuery helps you on the fly, just creating those solutions for the oddities of different browsers. So we use those two. And then I mentioned that we're going to put an XAPI wrapper around our content. And like most of the things I just showed you, actually everything I'm showing you today, with the exception of maybe 2 products, are all free open source products that you can grab. So Bootstrap and jQuery, all free. This is an open source wrapper from ADL.NET. That's the focus behind SCORM. And so they've written this JavaScript wrapper that you can wrap around your HTML content. And it kind of like that jQuery, it's a whole library of JavaScript that just simplifies the process of sending and receiving data to Learning Record Store there. This is the GitHub repository for it, and they have a nice documentation site as well. So what else am I using? Oh, I'm going to use OAuth for the login. And you could roll your own from scratch, but for this demo and just to get things going, and really a lot of times in life it's nice just to outsource some of that kind of stuff. So I'm using that, and let me illustrate how that works. So rather than create my own database of user logins and have to worry about keeping up with people's passwords and resetting passwords and all that stuff, you've probably seen all over the internet where you can log in with either Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. And so that's done through OAuth. It's a type of authentication on the internet. And so in this case, this service, OAuth, is handling a lot of that in the background for me. So with just a couple of lines of code, I'm able to create this so that I can just come in here and say, well, I want to log in with my Google login, and it will just log me right into this application. We're also using SCORM Cloud to capture that information, and if I come over to my SCORM Cloud LRS and refresh this, we can see that it just registered that James logged in to the demo app, and it has a little bit of information about me there. So I'm going to be brave and send this URL to everybody in the chat. Let's see if we can take down the internet. So I just put that in the chat so that you can come in there and start playing around, clicking on some of that. I don't want to take away from what I'm talking about or showing you on the screen, but I do want you to be able to see it and play with it a little bit as we're talking about and playing with it there. So if I go back to my SCORM Cloud, just keep in mind, whatever you type in that box, because there is one input box on the screen, is going to get saved into a database here somewhere. So I can see that David Bates already logged into it there. Ryan Smith. So it looks like everybody's getting in. Great. So the other thing that we're tracking on that is we're actually tracking each one of these clicks on these different items. We're tracking the coolness value that you set, and we're going to track whatever you submit there. So let me pull over the code and just talk a little bit about how I'm accomplishing that. So hopefully you're attending this, you're somewhat familiar with HTML and creating a web page. So all of this was created just in one HTML document. A lot of times these days you separate these out into what we call partials, or you separate the JavaScript into something else. For this demo, I just put everything all into one big HTML document. I say big, but really we're getting all this done in 370 lines. It's not too bad. Not too bad. So let me just kind of start at the top here. I have all the regular HTML tags, and you'll see these kind of things are Bootstrap settings, and so this is telling Bootstrap that I want this thing to be 6 columns wide on a medium-sized device. On an extra small device, I want it to be 8 columns wide. I should point out how responsive Bootstrap is. So this website, if I resize my browser, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the Chrome DevTools, and I'm going to tell it to put it in an iPad frame. So that's what it would look like on an iframe. You can see how it all collapsed there. If I rotate my iPad, now I have 2 columns this way and it collapses. So Bootstrap is really great at taking care of all that logic for you. I didn't need to write anything to make that happen there. All right. Coming back over to my code. So all these, like I said, are pretty standard HTML tags with some special classes and a few special tags in there for Bootstrap, but they have great documentation to show you how to get all that done there. Now if we come down into my JavaScript, this is where I've started setting things up. So the first thing I want to do is I just created a learner object, and this is what we're going to store the information about our learner. Once we get it from either LinkedIn, Twitter, or Google, we need to know their email address, essentially, is what we need from it for XAPI to work properly, because when we send the statements to SCORM Cloud, they're going to be tracked by email address. That's just how Tincan works, XAPI. So the first thing I do is I create this learner object there so that we can save that information in there. Let me pop this open. And this is part of the OAuth library that we looked at that's free on GitHub. The service isn't free, but the JavaScript library is free. The service is dirt cheap though. So we initialize our OAuth there, and that just gets it ready. And then we use, these are jQuery tags, this $sign with parentheses there. These are jQuery tags, and it's just telling jQuery, hey, find the element in my HTML that I named login modal. Misspelled that. That says login model. That I named incorrectly. Find that and show it. So in other words, pop it up. So that's why when you first open the page, all you see is that modal window that pops up and asks you to log in. And then we do a little bit of maintenance here on our slider because I just need to set the initial value of it. And then here's where we start getting into a little bit of custom code that I wrote for this. And this is just something I do to make this whole XAPI thing easier for me. One of the awesome things about HTML5 is the ability to add custom attributes to your tags in HTML. So let me go back up and find one of those. Here. So this is one of those first buttons that we have, and that's on the accordion. Let me get the page back up so I can illustrate it. So this, let me get out of this mode. So these groups of items here, this is called an accordion in Bootstrap because it acts like an accordion, gets bigger and smaller, goes up and down. And so on each one of these items here, I have placed this custom data tag. Now this isn't part of any HTML standard. This is a tag I invented. So long as it starts with this data thing, HTML5 is pretty forgiving, whatever you put after that. So data dash, whatever you want. So I created my own set of XAPI tags or attributes to add to all my hyperlinks. So this hyperlink is actually playing the role of a button. And I've set these XAPI attributes on there. So the event is called click. And what did you click? Well, in this case, it's group 1. So now, if I go back down to my code, I have that on pretty much every link on the page. So if I come back down to my JavaScript code, we can see that I'm telling jQuery to look for all the hyperlinks that have this event in them called clicked. And whenever they are clicked, I want it to run this function. And so the first thing I'm doing, obviously this still has some debug stuff in it. The first thing I'm doing is I'm logging it out to my developer console to say that something was clicked. So that was part of my debugging there. And then the next thing I do is I'm calling on, again, it's going to be a custom function I made that really is just extending that XAPI functionality that we added. So I'm going to call on this custom function called XAPI clicked, and I'm going to pass to it some information about what was clicked, which element was clicked. So now, if I come down here to that, this is all my XAPI code. You see, there's not a lot. in here. Of course, it is collapsed right now, but you'll see as we go through it, there's really not a lot of code in here. So the first thing I had to do was to configure that. So this is when you set up your SCORM Cloud account, they're going to give you some links, and I've changed these, so don't try. These aren't real. They're going to give you some links and passwords and stuff so that you can set up these kind of connections in there. So that was the first thing I had to do there. Oops, that's the login. We'll look at that in a second. This is the click. So it might look a little crazy here, but it's pretty straightforward. And like I said, they have some excellent documentation on their website. Pull that site back up. They have excellent documentation on here that walks you through what each one of these statements should look like. So in this case, for the clicking, as per XAPI, we need to send an actor, a verb, and an object to the Learning Record Store. And the actor is defined by their email address. And so when you log in, remember I have this learner object, and I'm saving to it the information that comes back from Twitter or Facebook or whatever service we're using. So I'm going to say the mail to is the learner's email address, and the name is the learner's full name that we got from LinkedIn. And then down here, the object is what. So you see I'm running the same function on every one of those clicks. The only thing I need to change really in the whole function is what was clicked there. And I'm sure you folks have clicked a bunch of things, so let me come in here and take a look at the SCORM Cloud. Yeah, and so we can see everybody's clicking. Group 1, Choice 2, etc. on there. And it'll tell you a little bit of information in there about who it was and the date that they clicked it and the time and all that stuff and what they clicked. You can expand on that more, but this is just kind of the basic functionality for it right now. So that's the clicking there. One thing I sort of skipped past was the logging in. So when you're first presented with those buttons, I'm using, as I said, that OAuth library. So let's take a look at how we do it for, let's try the Facebook one. Yeah. So for the Facebook login, again, I'm using that OAuth, and I pop that up. Once you've clicked the button and we get the results back from Facebook, then we can ask Facebook, oh, well, because Facebook only gives us a little bit of information at first, so we ask Facebook, well, we also need their first name, their last name, and their email address. So Facebook will send that response back to us, and then we can go through and start setting all our learner information based on that, including your picture, which is kind of cool that we can get that from there. So that's how we got that learner information. All right, now, before I go on to a couple of other things, I feel like I have just blasted you like a fire hose with a ton of information. So let me pause and see if everybody's caught up, if we have any really pressing questions.
James, it looks like right now we don't have any questions.
Awesome. Wow. I guess not too awesome. It's better when you have questions because then, then you know people are engaged. All right, so that was how we track the clicks on there. Now there are two other fields in there that are not just straightforward clicks, and that's the freeform response here and the slider on here. So let me show you how we handled that. So I have let's find the button for one of those. Here we go. So on the submit button here, which is this whole bit of code here, we say that when the submit button is clicked, we want to save the important thing. So when I come down to that function that I have, on that one, again, we're using jQuery to get the value of what you typed in there. And if you did type something in there, then we're going to go ahead and send that to XAPI, or to SCORM Cloud via XAPI. And if not, then we're going to pop up a little window that says, hey, you need to type something in there. I'm also using jQuery to disable those buttons on there too, in the text field, so that you don't play with it again afterwards, because in real life that's probably how you would do it, or else somebody, every time they rethink their answer, you would be getting a flood of information in your learning record store. So that is how we grab that. And actually, while I'm here, I'm going to take a look at the coolness slider. So this one is pretty much the same way. When you click the button to save the coolness, then I'm going to call the exact same function that I created, called XAPI responded. And you see I'm passing two attributes into this function. The first one is what we're setting or responding to, and that's in this case coolness, and in this one it's the thing. And then the second attribute that we're putting in there is what we're setting that to. So in this case we're setting it to the slider value. In this case we're setting it to whatever you typed into the box. So now we'll come down to that function, and you're going to see it looks almost just like the click one. The only exception is I've changed the object type to media. Oh, I guess I have media on that one too. But I've also added a second value that's passed into it, and that's to get what was the response as well. So I have the what, and then I've added the result as well, which is the response. And we can see that in action when I type in, best thing about it is reviews. I'll hit submit, and you see now this is locked up, so I can't change my answer there. And if I come back over to SCORM Cloud and refresh this, we'll see there's my answer, and my response is saved right there. All right, so I blew through that really fast. Which one of these technologies would you like me to talk about a little bit more?
Let's see. James, Paul has a question that says, I have always been leery about using Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, etc. to log into a site. What other information can you capture other than what you showed on screen?
Yeah, that's a good question. You actually, when you set up your application, so you have to create an app on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc., in order to authorize users through it. And when you set that up, you put in there what permissions or what elements you're going to want to get. And most of them have something called, like basic profile info, and that's just going to be, maybe your photo and your name kind of thing. And then they go from beyond that. So you have to select which ones you're going to do, and then it prompts the user with that. So hopefully when all of you clicked one of those buttons and you got the authorization page for it, it asked you, or it told you that I was going to get your email address and phone number or whatever. I'm not getting your phone number in this case. Most of those services don't even have your phone number. And actually, one of the reasons why I'm not using Twitter for this example is Twitter makes it really hard to get your email address from it. So I started putting Twitter on there, and then I pulled it out because I need your email address for it. So you can get all kinds of information, but the user has to approve it. So it's displayed to the user before they click agree.
Okay, perfect. Next question from Charles. Are you sending it to SCORM Cloud? Or you are sending it to SCORM Cloud, right? How would you then send it to a learning record store?
Well, actually, SCORM Cloud has its own learning record store. That's what I'm looking at here is the LRS viewer for SCORM Cloud. It's not my favorite one in the world. I don't know if I have a favorite one in the world, but SCORM Cloud does have statement forwarding so that you could send it here and then forward it to a different LRS if you wanted to. I just happen to be using SCORM Cloud for this example. If I come back in here to my configuration for the XAPI wrapper, which is this, I could easily change this endpoint to, Learn Dash or what's the other one, Waterfall or Grass Blade, or I don't know. They're all pretty sounding nature services now. But you could set up this to go to whichever LRS you want. In this case, I'm just using SCORM Cloud because that's where we had an account.
Okay, perfect. Therese asks, could you please do a quick process flow again, just as far as started with this tool, then next tool, etc.?
Sure, that's a great idea. Thank you. All right, so the first thing I did was I started with Bootstrap so that I could build my web page. And so that's what a lot of this stuff is in here. Bootstrap gives you a template and they show you examples, and so you start with an HTML page and you just start adding some Bootstrap components in here, like this CSS, and this is the theme for the CSS. Then at the bottom, oops, went too far at the bottom, there's some JavaScript for Bootstrap, etc. So that's the first thing I started with. I added jQuery to it as well, and that's in their documentation. They recommend that you use jQuery for some of the more advanced things that they're doing in there. I guess in theory you might could make a Bootstrap site without it, but I don't think you would have I don't think it'd be very cool without it. So that was the first thing I did, was I set up Bootstrap on my page. And then I just started building out these elements on the page. And truthfully, since I knew I was just building a kind of a demo here for this, I just went in here and I looked to see what the coolest components were that I saw right away. So if I go to this JavaScript tab at the top of this, it has in here, oh, there's tabs, and I have an example right there of how to use a tab. And if you scroll down, they have the markup for it. So just copy that, paste it into your HTML document, and then start customizing it how you want your stuff to look. So everywhere these little dots are, that's where you can put your own content in. So that was my first step, was to build my page there. And then because I wanted to get the functionality correct before I had to log in a whole bunch of times, I then went into here, and using jQuery, that's where I started setting up these calls I was going to do. But since I didn't actually have the OAuth set up, then I had to use just hard code in my own email address and user information rather than get it from the login service. So then I added that, and I just started testing, just logging stuff out to the console. And I don't know, if you're not a web developer, you might not realize that we saw earlier in there I had that console logging, and you can see on the side here, this is what we call the developer console, and every time I click on one of these, it's logging it out here. So you do that just to make sure that you have your code right and that everything's logging out correctly. Once I knew I had all that right, and then I could send it to SCORM Cloud using my own information without a login, then I went back and added the OAuth library and started testing with that. There's a couple of oddities about the OAuth. Just the different services do things at different ways. So like I said, Facebook right away doesn't give you all the information, so you have to ask it again for a few of the things. And then, like if we look at the Google Plus one, it gave me all the information in the first one, but they call things different. So this is first name, and this is first underscore name. So you have to, I would love it if I could have just one function on the page to handle all those, but I ended up having to create separate ones for each. There.
Perfect. EJ asks, have you thought about using Mondo or Node to build a self-referencing LRS?
I use Mongo for a couple other things with Node.js. For those of you not familiar with that type of web development, Mongo is a new type of database, if you will, that a lot of web applications, newer web applications, are using now instead of the old like SQL type database. And Node.js is this really crazy cool web server solution that actually uses a JavaScript engine. It's the same one that's packaged inside of Chrome. So each browser has their own JavaScript engine that it uses to interpret JavaScript. That's the reason why you have to write JavaScript differently for different browsers. And the JavaScript engine is so awesome, and they've pretty much open sourced it all, and it can run by itself, that people have started using it as a web server. So instead of writing web server code, you basically just write JavaScript to create a whole web server on there. I have not used it to create my own LRS. There's a ton of open source LRSs out there already, and some of the newer ones are using Mongo. I think most of them are probably using PHP and Mongo, but there's a ton of them out there, so I haven't bothered to try to create my own.
Okay. I think those are the majority of the questions. A couple other people have asked if we'll make this recording available. The answer is yes, absolutely, we will. That should be posted on our blog here in the next couple days. Probably give us until next Tuesday. James, is there anything else that you want to say before we wrap up here?
Well, I'm going to do the spiel for eLearning Brothers, and well, you probably were about to, but I just wanted to say, you might not realize that eLearning Brothers does custom development as well. We're not just templates. We have won a lot of awards, and we like to create custom solutions that use a lot of different technologies and go beyond just the rapid development experience there.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, if you are sitting through this and thinking, man, that sure looks cool, I have no idea where to even start. The first place to start is probably by giving us a call or using our website to contact us. Let us help you out. We can take you from concept to completion. If you've got something scratched down on a napkin somewhere, or if you've got it halfway done and you're just looking at your deadline and saying, there's no way I can meet this, wherever you are in the process, we'd love to help you out. Looks like there aren't any other questions. So, James, we appreciate your time, and we'll close this one out. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Have a great day.
Thank you all.